Hey, and welcome to the highlights of episode number 107 with Dr. Cabral. Some of my favorite parts of this episode were when he talks about why B vitamins are so important and how to get them in for a vegan-based diet. I also love it when he debunks the protein myth and how a vegan diet varies for the different vata, pitta, and kapha body types. But there is so much more wisdom, knowledge, and inspiration that you get in the full episode. So, to listen to the full podcast and to get all the info in the show notes, head to melissaambrosini.com/107 right now. Stephen, welcome back. I'm so excited to have you on the show again. So tell me first up, you have seen over 200,000 one-on-one clients in your clinic. So what are the common deficiencies that you see with a vegan or a majority plant-based diet?
The big deficiencies I see in those people that come in that are vegan or even that have digestive issues, because we can go with both, are predominantly calcium. Number 2 would be iron, then zinc, then vitamin D, then B12, vitamin B12, and we'll talk about why later, I'm sure, and then omega-3s. All right. So those are the top ones: calcium, iron, zinc, vitamin D, B12, and omegas. That is what I see in my practice.
Okay. Right. Okay. So what can we do to avoid those deficiencies?
So one of the best ways that we know to help people to absorb more nutrients as well is to make sure that their gut is in great functioning order. That means as you chew food and chew it up really well to mix it with your saliva, your salivary amylase for an enzyme into your stomach, make sure your stomach's producing enough hydrochloric acid to break down the proteins in plant-based foods as well. Then we want to release enough bile from the liver, gallbladder area into the intestines, and then make sure our bacteria in our gut is balanced. Because if it's not, doesn't matter. It really honestly does not matter how great your diet is if your digestion is weak.
So can you talk us through how a vegan plate could look for the different body types to make sure that they're getting all the nutrients they need plus catering for their specific body type?
For the vata body type, which is characterized by the dryness, by the coldness, by the air, by the ether, they do much better with cooked vegetables. So when people say that you should be on a raw diet, you should be on this diet, you should be on that diet, I always ask, well, for who? Who are we talking about? Is it the pitta that does great with more of the raw-based vegetables? Or is it the vata? Of course, we're talking about being balanced, right? That cooked vegetables are warming, they're nourishing for them, they're comforting, and it doesn't take a lot of energy to break them down when the vata is always in fight or flight, always a little bit anxious, always a little bit kind of moving. So that's a great place to start. The next part we look at is the starches, okay? So starches, if you are paleo, you're going to stick with more of your yams and squashes and yucca. All of those are great, your root-based vegetables. So now think of it this way, or if you're not following that, you might do some quinoa, or you might do some rice or oats or something like that, okay? You can still do gluten-free, which I'm an advocate of. So what you're looking at this, though, is the vata type could actually do more starch than the kapha type, right? Which the kapha type is more of the endomorph. The issue is that the vata body type does not get the same blood sugar spike and that their bodies run better off of glucose. Whereas the kapha-based type, their body's going to store more of those sugars from the starches, turn it into body fat, and burn fat as their preferred fuel source, which is why they do better on a lower starch diet, specifically in the evening or not around exercise. Can they still do starches or can they still do fruit? Absolutely. They just do better on more vegetables, lower glycemic foods. And then we have the protein section. Now, the protein section is where it differs greatly for people, meaning that the vata type needs easy to digest proteins. So if you're doing a vegan-based protein, whether it's bean or lentil, it is better if it's sprouted, if it's soaked, or even if it's blended. If you make black bean soup, so much easier to digest than black beans themselves. Also, split mung bean or mung dal is great. That can be great for the vata type, like a khichdi dish with some rice and some ghee and some, or we wouldn't use ghee for vegan based, but you can use olive oil. That would work great as well. Moderate protein for the kapha. They're already an anabolic body type. They already put on enough mass. And the pitta type, which has very strong digestion. And in order to satiate their pitta, they do need more protein. Okay, so more of the beans, more of the hemp hearts works great for them. The last macro, as we're looking at, would be fat. And fat would be less for the kapha. We don't want to spike blood sugar and then draw in more fat, and not as heavy for the vata. The pitta can work just fine. So that's typically how we set it up based on the doshas.
So how can we make sure that besides healing the gut, like what can we do to make sure that anyone who is a vegan or a predominantly plant-based diet gets their B vitamins?
Let's get our gut functioning well. Let's build up our good digestive enzyme store, our hydrochloric acid or bile, and our good gut flora so that we can break down these foods. So, for example, vitamin B1, thiamine, you get it predominantly from beans and from oats. Now, I want to share this with you because they're all a little different. And as you're listening, I want you to understand that this is why you can't eat the same foods every day, especially as a vegan, because we all have our fallback to our favorite foods. But if you don't eat a wide variety of foods, you're going to be missing out. So B1, beans and oats. B2, which is riboflavin, is spinach, soy, and spelt. I call it my 3 S's: spinach, soy, and spelt.
That was just so great. Thank you so much for that. Now, let's move on to protein. Where can we get our protein on more of a vegan-based diet?
We need about 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now, that's not always the easiest math to do. Think of it this way. Think of your ideal body weight. If it's 160 pounds, you need about 80 grams of protein per day. A little less. A little less would be 0.8 grams, right? So the average human walking around needs somewhere around 45, 50, 60 grams of protein a day. You can easily do that over 3 meals. It's only 15 to 20 grams of protein per meal with a vegan-based or plant-based diet. That's it. So, like literally, if I can share my nutrition plan with you, I do my daily nutritional support powder in the morning, which comes from pea and rice-based protein. It's 15 grams. I put my fruit and veggies in there. That's certainly not a lot of protein, but I have some oatmeal on the side that adds another 5 to 7 grams. Again, not everyone's going to do oatmeal because they might be a kapha or endomorphic body type, and they need to keep their starches or grains a little bit lower. And I totally respect that. I understand that. But for me, that's 22 grams of protein, 22 grams. Easy. For lunch, I do a vegan-based lunch. It's part of the detox that I do. And what I do is I do a mountain of cruciferous vegetables. Like literally, I do broccoli and I do cauliflower. And these are things that I used to never like, but now I add them and I learned to love them. Like I love them. I put olive oil on it and some sea salt. Tastes great. I do a sweet potato or maybe some rice or rice. And I do hemp hearts, and I do 3 big tablespoons of hemp hearts. One of my favorite vegan-based proteins, if not my favorite, probably is my favorite. And that right there, 3 tablespoons of hemp hearts is 15 grams of protein. I get another 5 to 10 with my sweet potatoes and my other stuff in there. So I'm looking at 25 grams right there. And then dinner is going to be a squash or rice, and then I add veggies like spinach.
Can we talk about saturated fats and why they're so important for a vegan diet and how they can get them and some forms that they can get them in?
If I see someone walk in with cholesterol below 160, well, then, and I see them with the low libido and I see them low testosterone, low DHEA, low all hormones, and I know that cholesterol is the precursor to all hormones in the body, I say, okay, let's raise some saturated fats in the diet coming from healthier sources. Okay, so I want to put a little caveat there because my favorite fats are monounsaturated fats because they're great for the brain, the nervous system, they're anti-inflammatory, they don't oxidize like the polyunsaturated fats that we'll talk about in a moment, and they help to kill cancer cells, okay? Olives and olive oil help to actually break down the liposomal layer of cancerous-based tumors. Can't recommend olives and olive oil. Got, of course, organic, cold-pressed olive oil in a nice dark bottle, single source. Enough. But you can get your healthy saturated fats from some coconut oil. Works for some people, doesn't work for others. Macadamia nuts, cashew nuts, walnuts. You're going to get it from pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds. 2 of my favorite. By far, pumpkin seeds are so great for women. and also great for men. Why? Well, they're going to help to increase iron levels naturally, but also they're going to be great for the prostate, great as an anti-inflammatory. Big fan of pumpkin seeds and Brazil nuts. That's another great way. Hazelnuts, pistachio nuts, and again, the flax seeds, chia seeds. All of those they'll contain a little bit of what's called polyunsaturated fats. So ideally, we don't cook with them. They're eaten in their raw-based version.
Let's talk a little bit about raw vegan and how we can do that right so that we're not creating a disaster for our body.
So raw vegan is very, very similar to vegan, and it's the same type of thing, except that we're not cooking our foods for the most part, or at least we're not heating them above 118 degrees. So there's obviously different variations of what we want to consider raw veganism, and we don't need to even debate that. But let's just say the food is left intact and it has all of its enzymes. And in order to do that, you need to keep it below 118 degrees before we start to break down those enzymes. Okay, so to do that, the very first thing is basically three things I teach everyone in my practice who's raw vegan, is that you have to have three things working for you. First one is your gut function and energy have to be solid. Because if your gut is not functioning correctly and you don't have enough energy, you're not going to have enough energy to divert that to be used for extra energy for digestion, and you're going to become bloated and exhausted. So if you go on a raw vegan diet and you're bloated and you're tired and you have brain fog, it's not necessarily that those foods may be bad for you. It's that your body literally doesn't have the digestive juices to break down those foods, and you don't have the energy to be able to absorb all of those nutrients. So that's number one. Number two is that ideally, if you're going to be a raw vegan, you are not a vata body type. It can be very detrimental for the vata body type, much better for the pitta or the pitta kapha. A lot of people who benefit greatly and do well on a vegan-based diet are more of the kapha body type, the endomorphic body type, because remember, a vegan-based diet is more of a plant-based, catabolic-based diet, a very detoxifying diet. It's not really an anabolic diet. An anabolic diet or anabolic foods would be more of the meats and the dairy and the eggs and those types of things. And again, I'm not saying you need to do those, but you should focus on more of the anabolic plant-based foods, which would be like the oatmeal and some of the starches and the lentils and those types of things. So you can always make it work. Sometimes it's just going to be a little bit more of a challenge. That's all. And then the third one is ideally you're living in a warm or hot climate. And the truth is that we humans probably all originated from some warm climate where we could easily eat a lot more raw foods. Our bodies were hot, they were sweating, and they would love to have had those cooling raw-based foods. Now, if you're like where I am in New England and in Boston, where for 6 months, 7 months of the year, it's cold and it's raw, I would prefer, and most people would prefer more warming, comfort-based foods. That's normal. Why? Because our body is always trying to create equilibrium. It's always trying to create homeostasis. If I put cold foods in my body is going to constrict in itself. And if I put warm foods, or it's going to expand, and if I put warm foods in, my body is going to be more comforted. It's going to add more heat to it, and it's going to balance the cold environment. So again, can we always make these work? Not necessarily, but we can always do our best to stay balanced. Hopefully that answers your question.
So what are some other pitfalls of a raw vegan diet?
In the beginning, most people going on a vegan-based diet feel really great. A lot of people, okay? But after a while, our body uses up a lot of its reserves, and it can't buffer everyday stress in the same way. So our body very specifically goes through our B vitamins, which we spoke about, vitamin C, glutamine, all the things that our body uses to buffer stress. Well, after a while, if we're not getting them as much through our diet because we're not as conscious of the different proteins and foods and veggies and all the things that we're eating, we're just not able to absorb them as well, break them down, because plant foods are sometimes more challenging to break down. You do have to make sure you chew them well and that you have a good digestive system. Using a good daily digestive enzyme can help. Things can help with that. Ginger tea can help. Bitters can help. All of those things is that the body starts to become more deficient. The brain fog, the fatigue, the low ambition, the low libido, the low drive, a little bit groggy, waking up, more irritable, lower mood, all of that starts to set in. And then at some point, sometimes people just being told, well, you're having a Herxheimer-based reaction. Trust me, if you're having a Herxheimer-based reaction, it would have happened within the first week. It would have happened within days of you going on a vegan-based diet. If you're feeling that way 6 months later, a year later, it could be because you were becoming severely functional deficient, not just on blood work. Again, run a hair tissue mineral analysis for your minerals, run an organic acids test for your vitamins. It will show you if you're deficient or not, because maybe you're not. And stress plays a role in breaking these things down. Remember, your blood work is not going to show you until you get a disease. We want to catch it at a subclinical level as you're becoming more deficient. That is extremely, extremely important.